It may be 60 years since the Japanese surrender signalled the end of the war, but for many gathered at today's lunch in Newcastle, the memories are as clear as yesterday.
It was a great relief. Think, well, God, this is over. Get back home out of this place.
We were so terrific that we forced our way through the barbed wire on the side and knocked off a Mercedes-Benz and went round the streets for the 24 hours.
Alf Stone was a prisoner in Austria at the end of the war. Jim Day was manning searchlights in Borneo. Both were chuffed to receive the federal government's specially minted medallion marking their service to Australia. The day triggering thoughts of 1945 when news of the surrender first hit the airwaves.
We picked up on an old radio we had there that had come through, and there's not much we could do. We didn't get issued with 2 bottles of beer or anything like that. We're just out in station.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This is what it's all about. A Hunter Valley Wine Show gold medal is the sort of marketing money can't buy. As always at a Hunter wine competition, the region's premier variety, Semillon, will be among the most closely scrutinised categories.
For young Semillons, you're looking for freshness, good colour, good sort of green tints, lemongrass, right through to vanilla and sometimes floral characters.
Regarded as Australia's largest regional wine show, 125 wineries have entered 1,000 wines for judging across many classes. Each bottle must come from grapes grown in the Hunter Valley, with the show doubling as a way to ensure the region's wine characteristics are preserved.
Identify the characteristics of the region and try and improve them through the input of the judges, saying the sorts of things that winemakers should be doing to improve the quality of their work.
All judges are restricted to tasting around 150 wines a day to prevent anyone suffering palate fatigue before the medal winners are decided on Wednesday. And if you're wondering why the judging's held at an army barracks, well, they've got a large enough dining hall and the manpower to keep the thousands of glasses clean. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
After a slow start to the season, the North Stars have stormed home to place in the top 2. Brisbane didn't really know what hit them, down 3-0 in the first period. The goals just kept coming in the second term, with a great Rod Stark slap shot. Import Jordan Landry tapped in for a second for the match, and it was 5-0. The North Stars cruising to a 7-2 victory, and despite losing in overtime to Sydney in their second weekend match, they can look forward to hosting the final series in September. In Premier League field hockey, wins for Gosford, South, the Entrants and the Tigers. And taking things a little more extreme, riders in the state downhill mountain bike round at the Central Coast at the weekend, but some bikes were just as slippery. Newcastle's Adam Smithson finished second overall in the men's.
This government has to answer the question, who bungled, Western Australia or New South Wales? If it's a Western Australian bungle, get him back on a plane and send him back there immediately. If it's a New South Wales bungle, then we've been grossly misled by the Premier and the Minister.
They had a choice of where to parole him. They had a choice of Western Australia and New South Wales, and they picked New South Wales.
It's a good result for them, though, isn't it? They got rid of him.
Well, so far.
He was jailed for more than 400 years, but he got out after 5 years. Now, that's a problem for the Western Australian justice system, but we don't want him here. And if he's here because of a bungle of the Labor government in New South Wales, then Morris Yema needs to come clean and tell us exactly what happened.
In the future, I'll be telling the other ministers, justice ministers around Australia, that I'll want to personally be advised of this type of, particularly pedophiles or people who have been convicted of sex crimes. I'll want to know personally before they intend sending him to our state.
One of the Hunter Valley's most successful speed traps, the Lochinvar camera, snares thousands of motorists every year. However, some of its first prey in 2005 have now escaped penalty after the fines were challenged in Maitland local court. The 7 were snapped on Friday, January 28, the first gazetted school day of the year, for travelling in the 40km/h school zone, even though the nearby schools didn't return until 3 days later.
The real argument wasn't an attack on the integrity of the speed cameras, but on whether a person's innocent mistake could be used successfully as a defence in a prosecution like this.
However, others booked by speed cameras are unlikely to benefit from the decision.
First of all, it's a local court decision. That doesn't create a precedent. It might be persuasive, but I can imagine the circumstances in which it would apply would be pretty few and far between, so I'm sure the RTA aren't lying awake at night over this.
Maitland councillor Peter Way will now use the cases to push for flashing lights to be installed so motorists know when the school zone is in use.
I believe we certainly have extremely good grounds to request the RTA to install those traffic warning lights here at Lochinvar.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Given the bruising nature of yesterday's game, there were as many players resting as recuperating today. The match against Manly sent a sellout crowd home happy, but Craig Smith doesn't have fond memories of the first half, if any. Sea Eagles' Steve Matai facing a one-week suspension for the hit. Former knight Ben Kennedy showed the form that made him popular during the days he called Newcastle home, as his new club piled on the points. But right on cue, the game breaker came from the real king of the castle. The injury count on both sides pointed to what was a bruising affair. Manly has its troubles, while Matt Gidley could have played his last for Newcastle this year, and Brad Tighe has his problems. But somehow the pain isn't nearly as bad for the victors.
Last 8 weeks have been magnificent, just going training and there's a buzz in the air and the boys are laughing and having a good time and joking around and we're winning games, so you can't beat it.
And it was confirmed today the Knights will play a trial match in Alice Springs early next year against Penrith.
We'll be hot, but it'll certainly lose some of those kilos that you put on over Christmas.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. In October 2002, terrible bushfires tore through small communities near Kurri Kurri in the Hunter Valley. Houses were destroyed and tragically one life was claimed. While the bush was burning behind them, 2 pub cricket teams simply kept playing. Their famous match was captured in an award-winning photo and appeared on front pages across the globe. Now the game's legend just grows. Today the finishing touches were applied to a mural immortalising players from the station hotel team on the side of their local watering hole.
Not a bad 15 minutes of fun.
Pretty happy with it.
They've been described as laconic and as lunatics, but the batsman who was at the non-striker's end, Mark Williams, isn't sure what all the fuss is about.
It sounded like trucks driving past that was going through the bush that quick and trees were exploding and it still didn't seem that bad to us. We wanted to stay there and win the game.
Crazy and lunatics, well, possibly, but no, not really. I mean, you go out to play cricket, you want a result at the end of the day, so we weren't going to walk off in a hurry.
They were told to pull stumps by the park ranger not long before flames reached the field.
No, I don't think we thought that we were in any direct threat at any time, so no, it was just a good day of cricket, I reckon.
Known as the Ashes, the cricketer's mural is the 29th to be painted in Kurri in the last 3 years. All the works have historical significance to the town, a town now determined to be known as Australia's mural capital.
There'll be probably at least 15 more, and I think we will be the biggest mural town in Australia, and that's certainly what we're aiming for.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Since a mysterious gas fire ignited in the workings of the bridge last Tuesday, traffic has been slowed to a crawl and the bridge has been unable to lift to allow boats to pass. 8 days since the fire, the RTA has finally worked out what happened, and it's a doozy. Apparently, when the bridge was built, galvanised metal was wrongly used in the concrete counterweights, and the zinc from the galvanising combined with leaking water has produced an explosive cocktail.
And for those of you that did high school chemistry, zinc plus alkaline water together produces hydrogen gas.
Last year, the western span of the bridge was found to be sinking into the lake. Now the eastern span is at risk of blowing up.
The reason we're not allowing people on the bridge is because we're venting hydrogen gas now. You can imagine the last thing we want is anything on the bridge that could produce a spark and ignite the hydrogen.
Yachts are banking up on the ocean side of the bridge waiting to come in. Many are also trying to get out, like this family who resorted to lowering their masts so they could clear the bridge and set off on holidays. Of more concern, though, are the lake's 3 main rescue boats that are all trapped inside. The Water Police, Coastal Patrol and Coast Guard unable to respond to emergencies on the eastern side of the bridge.
The alternative would be to have a police boat come down from Newcastle.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Unlike our rail network, the New South Wales Premier arrived in Newcastle well ahead of schedule. His first stop, Newcastle's United Ganinan factory, where he inspected the manufacture of $541 million in new rolling stock for the outer suburban Sydney rail services and the Hunter Valley. The Hunter's 14 new carriages are currently being fitted out and tested, with the first to begin service in the new year.
It's a priority in our plans to improve our rail services and our rail infrastructure right across the state.
But on the controversial issue of cutting the rail line into Newcastle, Morris Yemma is refusing to make any commitment to retaining the service, craftily working his way around the issue.
You're saying you won't look at the rail issue again. Is that a done deal now? Is that...
What I'm saying is that just one step at a time. I'm coming up to meet not just my ministers and my members, but the local community.
Mr Yemma says he hasn't been fully briefed on details surrounding the impending closure and won't be making an instant decision on the matter. In fact, no one was making any definite statements. Minister for the Hunter, Michael Costa, simply saying, "I support the Premier." Colleen West, NBN News.
On the streets of Swansea, Caves Beach, Blacksmiths and Pelican today, the latest weapon in community crime busting, the mobile community monitor.
Because the vehicle operates for 7 days a week, we have 3 guards employed. They are rostered on shifts. They will patrol the area, and the vehicle will always be on the streets moving around.
The aim is to crack down on bad behaviour.
Mostly antisocial behaviour, the younger kids, teenagers type of thing, a few break and enters, that type of thing, fires and rocking of cars and people that shouldn't be in places where they shouldn't be at certain times of the early hours of the morning.
Residents can call in the mobile monitor on 0417 497 144. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A sight we rarely get to see close up, a 3-squadron Hornet pilot from Williamtown at work using his aircraft's firepower. In reality, it's not necessarily the pilot's decision to launch a strike, rather it could be a call from ground troops known as Terminal Attack Controllers, whose responsibility includes calling in bombing runs.
It's not just getting the bombs on target, but it's getting bombs on the right target. So we not only need to be precise, but we need to be able to discriminate between both friendly and enemy forces and non-combatants so that we can minimise collateral damage. 8
Air Force and Army personnel are currently undertaking the controllers course at Williamtown. This week it's their practical on the Singleton firing range, with support from artillery, infantry and 3-squadron FA-18s. In a role reversal, Northern Territory-based Hornet pilot Craig Tobin has traded his aircraft for the ground to sharpen attack skills.
The better the talk on from the guy on the ground, the more chance we actually have of getting the bombs on target using large features such as hills and burnout areas of grass and things like that.
Training to be a terminal attack controller takes 4 weeks, with the present participants to complete their course at the end of next week. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Shadowed by the real thing, the Jets made their season official this afternoon in the hangar of an aircraft museum.
Everybody, I think, suddenly realises that the season is upon us.
In front of club and federation heavyweights, the sound and light show brought nerves to the surface after a marathon pre-season.
Preparation isn't ideal, but I still think, we'll be ready for the first game of the season.
On the field, their A-League build-up continues with more friendly matches against brave local sides. Last night, the Adamstown Rosebuds gave the Jets a real scare early on, keeping Andy Pedersen busy in goal. Newcastle, though, quick to respond in attack. The Jets' second was messy, finished off by Guy Bates. A broken foot was but a mere memory for teenage striker Mark Bridge, this one of 2 goals in his second game back from injury.
I felt good. The foot held up perfect. My fitness is getting better.
It's the same story for Stu Mishalik, pushing his case for a regular spot with every game.
He's in competition with some good midfield players in the club, but I think as the season progresses, he's going to show everybody that he's going to become a very important member of our team.
The Jets finished 5-0 winners.
Whether or not we're gelling well, the real test will be in the first game against Adelaide.
So the board have decided to increase the prize money for our mile from 50 to 60,000 this year. That's good news for the interstate and international horses that come and contest the race.
Having won 7 consecutive matches to make it to the final, knew the calibre of bowling from this duo was going to be something special. A Newcastle representative player with a point to prove after going down in the same stage of the competition last year, Ian Lean made it difficult for his opponent with some perfectly placed bowls giving him a small lead. Wayne Lambourne of Maitland City was quick to claw back though, producing some gold of his own. But in the end, it was Lean who reached the target of 25 shots first, a victory made all the more sweet given the quality of his opposition.
Wayne's a very good player. He represents his zone side and he has been a state player, so it was a great achievement for pretty much the underdog to win. It was great.
At Waratah, the annual Street vs Beat Touch Football Challenge was played between local police officers and Aboriginal students from Waratah High School. Although ending in a 5-all draw, the game's more about building relationships between the two groups than it is about winning. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.